Hey, this is Ralph, and in this video I want to use some charting tools in Excel in order to make some visual representations of this data that I've got here. So I went out on the web and over from the census website, got some home sales data for the past 12 months. And these numbers are in thousands, so if we're reading it in May of 2011, we can estimate that 5,000 houses sold under $150,000, 9,000 houses sold between $200,000 and $299,000, and so forth. So that's how we're reading that. So I've got this data, but I'd like to present it in some charts, which are simply visual aids for data that could be considered rather complex to discern from. So let's go ahead and get started. And I've got my data available to me, which is always a good first step. And then it's just a matter of making a column chart. The first column chart I'm going to make is going to be overall very, very straightforward. I'm going to select all of my data. And notice that I'm selecting from A1 down to H13. So I'm getting this blank cell A1, which is simply the connector cell here. But I'm getting the cells that contain my column labels, and I'm also getting the cells that contain my row labels. Now technically I could make a column chart out of just this, but I'm not going to have good meaningful descriptions or labels for my data. So if you've already got good labels that describe things, then go ahead and select all of those. So I've got those selected. I'll jump over to my insert ribbon. I'm going to go to column, and I'm going to stick with the two column charts up here. I am not fond of three-dimensional columns or three-dimensional charts most of the time. If you really just want to show a small chart, like in a newspaper or something, I guess they look kind of nice, but I don't find them easier to read. I like two-column charts, so I'm just going to go ahead and do what's called the clustered column, which is probably one of the most common ones you would do. And I'll just hit insert, and let me just size this so we can see it a little bit better, so we can figure out how this is going. And this is not a bad chart. We've got our data here, starting from May of November. I'm sorry, that's May of 2011. I should use a better numeric format. In fact, let me go ahead and fix that right now. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this chart and just show you. I'm going to just go ahead and select my dates here. I'll change the number formatting. And I did a custom one, so I can change it out. I can do YYY. There we go. So we'll do the year, and then do it this way. So now we got the 4-digit year and the month displayed that way. Go and select this data, and insert column, clustered column, and here's our clustered column chart. A little bit tough to read sometimes, but you know, you could say, all right, because I've got a lot of data on here. So if I look at 200,000 to 299,000, $200,000 homes, basically it's the green bar I'm looking for. Okay, so there's the green bar, and I can see there was a little dip as we got into the latter part of 2011, and then it really started to spike at the beginning of 2012 and in the spring of 2012, but then started to drop back down a little bit. So I can kind of look at just that. Now this doesn't really give me a good picture of the total home sales. I'm looking at really individual categories of house prices. So maybe the clustered column chart is not the one that I'd like to use. All depends, of course, on how you want to express your data. So let me go ahead and delete that one. I'm going to keep my data selected. I'll click on Insert, Column. In this one, I'm going to do the stacked column chart. And this one's kind of nice, especially when you want to show multiple categories or multiple products and you want to see a total. So I'm going to click on this one and make this a little bit bigger. And this one I think is pretty cool because now the combinations of all the little colored bars will show us a total. So now I can kind of see what are total home sales doing over this time period. And I can still see, okay, it was kind of a little bit of a drop off in the latter part of 2011 and then picked up at the beginning of 2012. So this is kind of a nice, and since there's fewer columns to look at, it's a little bit easier to just at a glance figure out what's going on. Now what's really tough to do though, it would be tough to look at this chart and say, well, what's been the change in houses that are 150 to 199, basically the red bars. You have to look at these and look at the thickness of just the red bars to determine if there's been a increase, a decrease, or has it been pretty flat. And you just can't look at the top edge or the bottom edge because they start in different areas. So a stacked chart it's tough to discern individual categories or individual products, but it's great when you want to look at totals. Also, at a glance too, you can kind of look at these as mini pie charts in a way, because you can tell, since let's just look at March of 2012, the green chunk here was the biggest chunk, was visibly the biggest chunk, and of course green corresponds to homes 200 to 299. And if I look at the thin little gray up here, those are homes 750,000 and over, so that's the smallest portion. So you can get some ratios out of this to find out what's been the biggest. So I do like those, but obviously it's a different purpose with a stacked column chart. So those are really good charts. Let me go ahead and delete this. I'm going to show you one more here, but this isn't going to be a really good one for our data. I'll go ahead and click on Insert, Column, and I'm going to do this 100% stacked. It's going to show percentages. Now this can be a really good chart, but it's not a good chart for the data that I'm demonstrating right here because it's tough to discern information. Basically, it's great if you wanted to see, okay, I've wanted to see percentage changes, but since all of my columns are 100% for a particular month group, okay, I don't really see the change in growth there, and then it requires me to really study the chart to see changes in percentage. So this could be a really good chart, but it's just not good for our data, and basically just shows percentages. So I'm a big fan of just the clustered column chart or the stacked column chart. Column stack chart for our data, but just not that percentage stacked column chart. So that's a little bit with column charts, and in the next video I think we'll look at a couple other chart types.